Welcome back to the World Crypto Economic Forum, brought to you by Celsius. Thanks, Celsius, for making this happen. We have some more wonderful panelists, and we're going to be talking about DAOs, the future of work and companies. So our speakers include, I'm going to read you their bios, and I'm going to hand it off to them. They're going to give you their own take on things right now, but I'll give you an introduction. So our first speaker will be Saro McKenna. She's a co-founder of the breakthrough NFT metaverse Alien Worlds, one of the world's most popular blockchain games. She has bridged traditional business practices with decentralized communities and concepts since the early days of cryptocurrency. Prior, she spent more than 4 years in M&A at Rothschild's in London and has represented equity on boards of directors. Saro holds an MA Hans from Oxford University, where she was a Mrs. J.H. McCowan Scholar. Clarence Liu is the co-founder of Tacen, a legal-first US-based software company developing the first hybrid decentralized crypto exchange in the US. He is a Silicon Valley-trained software engineer that made the move to blockchain and business development in 2017. With deep experience in the blockchain industry, he advises several blockchain projects and has since moved to Dubai to oversee a number of projects as well. Tim Connelly is CEO of AccuChain, a new Web3 entrant selected to be in Polygon's first accelerator in March of 2022. Tim is a seasoned Silicon Valley serial entrepreneur. He has co-founded or served as the first CEO at a range of companies, from medical devices, client-server computer systems, accounting software, and a speech recognition IoT platform startup. Prior to becoming a general manager, Tim was both a hardware and software engineer, an engineering manager, a test engineering and operations manager, a marketing and market research executive, as well as a stint as CFO for a SaaS company. Currently, the startup firm AccuChain finds him as the new CEO. This new Web3 entrant was selected. Oh, there's a little typo there. So anyway, thank you very much. Now we've got a little bit of an overview about everybody. Sarah, why don't you go first and tell us what you had to share with the audience?
Sure thing. Thank you, Tatiana. So I've actually got these slides here. Can you see them when I move through them within the StreamYard software? No. Oh, there we go. Great. Thanks, guys. Okay, cool. So enterprise and DAOs, the future of work in companies. Great to be here talking about this. I'm Saro McKenna. I'm the co-founder of Alien Worlds. So during that extremely kind introduction, we were mentioning that Alien Worlds is actually the largest play-to-earn game, largest metaverse by users. So you can see that at dacradar.com. That's both daily active users and monthly active users. We have over 7 million lifetime users at this point, and every day about 200,000 players. We're playing accounts. Okay, so Alien Worlds is a play-to-earn NFT and DAO metaverse. So the two pillars of what we've built are utility NFTs, which have function in the game itself. So they're not collectibles NFTs, but they are game objects that you can play with, and DAOs. So we are the only project that has DAOs as competitive gaming objects. So DAOs are, of course, extremely in vogue at the moment. And what you'll be hearing a lot of is DAOs that are actually a way of governing part of the token supply of the project. In our case, what DAOs are actual gaming objects within the game. So a DAO is just a group of people represented by a singular on-chain account, a token, and a way of governing the permissions on that account. So it's a natural way of organizing people or teams, right? So within a gaming context, that's teams. And so we have competitive DAOs within the game itself. Okay, so that you can check this out on our technical blueprint or our website. This is the tokenomics of the Alien Worlds metaverse. We have inflation, which represents the gaming rewards, running through the planets, which each planet in our metaverse is a DAO, an on-chain DAO that users can stake to and vote on, and that are competing for stake. We also have land NFTs that are located on the planets, and the land each has unique attributes. And so mining on one piece of land versus another piece of land is different. And part of the strategy of the game is figuring out where you want to mine, what land NFT you want to use, and also tools NFTs. And then the collective dynamic, the collective team mechanic, which is competing at the level of the DAOs. So the planet DAOs and the land sits on the planets. Okay, so this is the smart contract architecture of the metaverse sitting on the WAX blockchain. So we actually were the first gaming project to be on 3 chains: WAX, BSC, the Binance Smart Chain, and Ethereum. The gaming logic primarily sits on the Wax blockchain, great chain for being able to encode smart contracts that allow for things like DAOs, and also the capacity for a lot of transactional throughput. Part of those massive player numbers that we have are due to that on-chain construction. So if you want to check this out in more detail, that's also in the technical blueprint. This shows the interrelationship between the Wax blockchain, the BSC blockchain, and the Ethereum blockchain. One thing just to note is that because of an architecture that is mainly on-chain, or in fact, pretty much exclusively on-chain, there's this ability for external applications to plug into the smart contract architecture through APIs that either we build or that other people build. This is one of the great consequences of an open on-chain architecture. And this is why DAOs are so fundamental to the metaverse proposition, but it's also why metaverses bring people together peer-to-peer. It's because of this on-chain construction that allows other people to build smart contracts or other developers to create APIs and then further applications that fit into the smart contract architecture that has initially been put in place. So a very powerful feature of an on-chain construction. Okay, so let's think about games, DAOs, and how that fits into the metaverse. So games have been a very strong initial application for this concept of the metaverse. And I would say that DAOs are because DAOs represent people and groups of people acting together as a team, they represent a really natural fit for this gaming application within the metaverse. Now, as the metaverse matures as something that we're using and as technology, the applications I think will also evolve through to more commercial propositions and even things that more replicate our lives in the real world. But right now, games are a really great first application for what we will be doing and what we are doing in the metaverse, and DAOs organize us as teams. Okay, so there's a little bit more about that kind of idea of work and leisure kind of coming together within this metaverse space. And again, DAOs a way of people being organized within that space to act collectively and have collective goals and also a collective treasury that they manage. Okay, so if we're thinking about this on-chain construction, this open interoperability that can then be built in, and the fact that the system is owned by its users, right? The key feature of Web3 versus Web2 is that the system is owned by its users because they own the tokens that represent the system. So that can be fungible tokens, NFTs, or indeed DAO tokens. So DAOs are tokenized on-chain entities. They have a token at the heart of them, a cryptocurrency. Because of this incredibly novel way of bringing people together and this peer-to-peer nature that is fundamentally part of this Web3 construction, there are dramatically different business models that result from that open peer-to-peer construction. So to the left there, we see a kind of historical business model where there's, one party that's selling something to another party, and in that transaction, those are the roles that they have. One is a consumer and one is a producer. Within Web 2, what we saw was that because information and data was such a key part of that transaction between the producer and the consumer, there was a sort of light triangulation of that, or a kind of surface triangulation of that, where we had these sort of influencers or super content producers that could monetize a position a little bit. So they were kind of consumers, but they were maybe making a little bit of money out of being kind of super consumers or being influencers of other people's consumption, but they still weren't economically producers, right? The producer was still the owner of the platform in that Web 2 paradigm. In Web 3, because the systems are tokenized, everyone who's using that system and who owns the tokens is a co-owner of the system. And that really subverts this whether there's a singular producer and a singular consumer. So when everyone's a co-owner, sometimes someone's a producer of content or a business proposition or NFTs within the metaverse, but sometimes that same person is a consumer. Those roles aren't fixed because everyone is incentivized to add economic value to the system, to propose things, to build things within it. And in fact, everyone co-owns it. So the profitability is not singularly within the purview of the platform owner. So this is an extremely important distinction between Web 2 and Web 3 and the different business models that result from that fundamental difference in who owns the platform. Okay, I'd like people to think about DAOs as the next iteration of this story of cryptocurrency. So, we had fungible tokens, and of course have fungible tokens as an incredibly powerful way of expressing power, stake, reward, value, fungible units of measurement within a system. And then we have had NFTs as a massively powerful way of representing unique objects, or sometimes not completely unique, but they can be in series of rarity, for example, and of power within tranches. Very, very useful way of representing objects within a system, right? Things within a system. DAOs also have a token, just like fungible tokens and NFTs. DAOs have a token at the heart of them, and they're ways of organizing people. I mean, of all of those three concepts, I think that might even be the most fundamental, right? If you can bring a group of people together, track their ownership, track their stake, and confer based on that power and stake permissions over a treasury, and allow that group of people to express their will collectively and their sovereignty over the treasury collectively, super powerful. So thinking about DAOs as the kind of next step in the story of tokens and of cryptocurrency itself. Great. So thinking about the peer-to-peer transactions and interactions that are made possible by this new metaverse economy, DAOs can airdrop their tokens to other DAOs in an effort to create cross-DAO holdings and co-incentivize each other. People can drop tokens into DAOs as a way of signaling, for example, their commitment to the DAO, or that they're interested in a particular proposition. The DAO can airdrop its tokens onto particular groups of people within the metaverse as a way of marketing their services or telling people that they've arrived. DAOs can take over each other by trying to obtain more of the token that describes the ownership of the DAO. You can have raids on DAO ownership, and a group of people can in a concerted way try and take over DAO. Incredibly dynamic, really, really powerful mechanics that can happen between groups of people. And all of these are kind of new token flows and new ways of people being able to acquire and use tokens within the metaverse, but they represent new ways of people competing and collaborating and selling to each other within the metaverse. Okay, and our perspective says that the DAO is a fundamental game object at scale. So, like we've had many sort of iterations of gaming, pay to play, free to play, mobile, and of course, play to earn as a major evolution in gaming, represented by blockchain gaming. We see the next iteration of that as being competing to earn, or competing as a community to earn, and that's within the DAO structure. So that's me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Saro. Clarence, no, Tim, you're up next.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I want to talk about the future of work in terms of projects. I think it's important to use that as the building block. And when we talk about projects, we're making the distinction between full-time work versus work for software developers on the infrastructure for a Web3 project. Now, there's the talent side, and then the project sponsor or hiring entities. Let me first talk about the advantages for the talent for these projects. Well, first of all, they need to be willing to work as independent contractors, and they meet the skill criteria of being able to do Web3 software development. And the number of people in that category is increasing fairly dramatically. So one of the first advantages is greater diversification by working on more projects, and that reduces risk and more learning opportunities for the individual. Now, the next thing is that project native tokens are really important, and a guideline would be that roughly 25% of the fiat currency earnings that an individual is going to have, these independent contractors, should be effectively a bonus that they're going to get above and beyond that fiat currency. And that'll be in what I'll call project native tokens. And also could be other tokens that are available on the platform. Now, not all projects are going to have what I call project native tokens, but that would be a positive thing in the selection of why some individual would want to work on a project. Now, there's both utility value for these tokens and the possibility of future appreciation value. So we, we consider that a hybrid token, and that's important. Now, unlike in the traditional world where people have resumes and so forth, in Web3, we think of it as a profile, and these profiles need to be validated, and an NFT can be created, could be more than one, for these individuals' profile, and the validation process can vary quite a bit. I don't need to go into that too much, but our platform at AccuChain, we call it Hybridverse, does have validation as a key aspect. Now, the next thing is, as a independent contractor working from home, they can look for projects anywhere in the world. So that's a major advantage for that global perspective. Now, there is a reason that some individuals may want to remain anonymous when they initially go out and look for a project. And with the platform such as our Hybridverse platform, it is possible for that individual to remain anonymous in that before they get into final negotiations on a project. So they can keep their privacy under their control, but they still have to be validated. So it's critical that our platform be able to validate them so that the hiring entity knows that these individuals they're considering are going to be able to do the job and be reputable and so forth. Now, the other side of the coin now is the hiring entity. There's got to be advantages for them. Now, one of the obvious ones is that the expense for the labor is project-based, not a fixed expense that they could have a problem with a developer not having something to work on, and that would be lost money. The next thing is the use of those project native tokens, when done well, could reduce the amount of cash that they need to spend for the developers. So that's a big advantage. Now, the talent pool, since it's global, will be very large. And finally, the payments can be made via a smart contract. Now, I need to define it as a project smart contract, a two-party smart contract. We use that term fairly broadly in the blockchain world, but some aspects of the things that are agreed to initially in the base payments from the hiring entity to the talent can be included in that smart contract, and then that reduces overhead. Now, I mentioned earlier the point about trust, and if the two parties have never worked together, and they're going to be considering being on a project, both sides need to be validated, and that can be done with both peer-to-peer validation and validation using basically checking of databases between the different sources of information for an individual, and also on the hiring entity, the smaller ones are not going to be well known. Those are some of the main points I wanted to make. Let's see. I think I've covered what I wanted to.
Perfect. Thank you, Tim. Clarence, we're coming up to you, and then afterward, we're on a tight time frame, so you definitely have enough time for your presentation, but we'll have a quick question and we're going to wrap it up. So Clarence, please give us an intro to your thoughts about DAOs in the future.
Yeah, cool. So the reason why I'm probably invited here, so somehow the long story is Tacen was started as a crypto exchange company, a technology company, and we raised $19 million last year to build a hybrid DEX in the US, which we'll be launching sort of end of this year. But so things are going pretty well on that front. The interesting thing, however, is that Tacen decided to put their headquarters in Wyoming. So there's definitely some significance from that if you know about Wyoming, right? So Wyoming, they just passed DAO legislation last year, which is really interesting. As a fact that a U.S. company would dare to even launch an exchange in the U.S. And have enough, legal defenses to do that and actually get the regulations figured out was, pretty daunting. And a lot of companies started approaching Tacen, asking for help about how to set up a DAO. You're in Wyoming. How did you raise $19 million? Where else can we set up DAOs? And so I just wanted to give a kind of a informative sort of global view of what what's happening now, sort of entity setup and what all these startups are doing. And as you can see, I am in Dubai, recently just located here. And I think Jamal from one of the earlier talks was talking about the brain drain, right? And how that's happening pretty quickly. The US isn't really good. So really was going over what we're now looking at as, if you want to set up a DAO now, and I'm talking about a legal DAO, LLC, so it's a little bit different, right? So if you're talking DAOs is just a way for people to organize. That's great. Works in many different things, like such in the alien worlds, for funding DAOs or NFT DAOs are really great ways for people to organize. But sometimes DAOs have to run into or consider legal liability, right? And when there's ever legal liability, you can foresee something like this happening, right? For example, if a funding DAO were to not KYC properly and accidentally fund North Korea or a terrorist organization, then there's going to be a lot of problems, right? So DAOs may want to structure themselves somewhere, actually, incorporate themselves and in a jurisdiction that lets them sort of have limited liability. And that's the main reason people will do that. So I spoke on this topic at Paris Blockchain Week. I was panelist there with Tron DAO, and in Paris as well, the regulatory environment isn't very good. And you can see we're in Dubai. It's a pretty good reason to be here. This is becoming the big hub now for crypto. Binance, Bybit, Huobi, they all just recently left Singapore and came here. But surprisingly enough, even Dubai is not the best place for DAOs. So at the moment, everyone's putting their DAOs in Panama or potentially the Marshall Islands. The Marshall Islands has a new for-profit DAO legislation coming out in the next few months. That's probably the best way to go in the future. But the general consensus right now is there actually isn't a very good place to set up a legal limited liability DAO sort of structure. And I want to just give you the few reasons why that is. So in Wyoming, the actual DAO legislation that was passed has a very centralized caveat to it. The DAO legislation in Wyoming specifies that there must be at least one central person that can rewrite the rules. So in fact, there's not really decentralized at all. And so we feel like the Wyoming DAO, perhaps the Wyoming legislature there is actually too smart. They actually said that the Wyoming DAO, the smart contracts for the DAOs must be a proxy DAO, right? So that means if you know anything about smart contracts, a proxy DAO allows you to basically rewrite the entire smart contract. So at the end of the day, if someone funds a terrorist organization, they need somebody there to pull the plug. So that doesn't fit for a lot of people to actually have someone be the fall guy and everyone else get away. Now, even then, in the Marshall Islands, they say that you must have 3 people with at least 10% of the DAO tokens, and those 3 people must be KYC'd. However, everybody else can be anonymous. So you're just saying, well, instead of having 1 fall guy, now you have 3 fall guys. Not sure if that's very much any better, right? And also, right now, the current Marshall Islands DAO legislation, and big shout out to Adam Miller. He's kind of the co-founder of MyDAO, which is the company now that they basically manage all the DAO setups in Marshall Islands. So Adam Miller would point out that yes, there is that 10% thing, but even worse, the current legislation is nonprofit, and they're working really hard on a for-profit system. But the nonprofit means that it's still kind of loosely saying nonprofit. They say nonprofit as in the DAO's token can appreciate in value, but the DAO cannot give dividends of any sort to any of the DAO token holders. So it's kind of okay, well, your DAO token can go up in price, but you can't distribute any, say, an investment DAO wouldn't work because any investments, unless you pump the token up, it's not really going to work, right? There's also other people setting up DAOs in Switzerland, which is a trust fund type structure. There is a problem with the maximum number of people there. And as far as I know, the Dubai is really catching up, but they just set up in March something called BARA, which is a virtual assets regulatory authority, and they will look into DAOs. But so far, the long story short is there is no actual really good jurisdiction now to set up a DAO still in this time and day and age. We're still working on it. That's why I'm in Dubai, trying to figure out, hopefully working with the legislator here and the regulators here to find some way to make this happen. But I think if all the places in the world to do it, it is here. There's a lot less red tape here. Things move quicker, much quicker than Wyoming, right? So basically it's a king that stamps something, right? So it's much better to talk to the centralized party. It does work, and that's why you're seeing kind of the huge uptick in people moving here in the last few months. Yeah, that's kind of the thing. And my background is in engineering, but I've somehow, when you're a co-founder launching an exchange in the US, you sort of just have to learn all the legal stuff, and it's been quite a ride, but I think it's been really interesting learning about the the legal complexities. And right now I'm setting up a new company in Dubai as well, and I can tell you that's also extremely, quite tough to do. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much, everybody, for that overview. We're basically out of time, but very quickly, where do you see the most progress in the DAO space over the next few years? Where should people keep an eye out before we sign off?
Most progress.
So my vote
Who wants to
would be the gaming space. I mean, I think that's where we're seeing a lot of traction with, various structures that allow people to come together. It's really a natural sort of guilds and people coming together to play to earn as a team is already happening. And I think that's going to keep growing. And it's a very natural progression from there to other commercial ways of interacting. So that would be my vote.
Tim, Clarence?
Um,
Go ahead, Tim.
Okay, yeah, I see the increase in building of infrastructure where a technical person could be on a team. Like our CTO was involved with a Polygon team back in 2017, and they went from 1 cent to $3 in 2021. So that opportunity is very unusual, and we'll see the possibility of more and more of that type of upside for certain software developers. It's sort of unusual though; it's not the mainstream.
Cool. I mean, there's a lot on the legal side and where I see things going, but I won't bore you with that. I think one of the most profound things I saw coming to Dubai in March was when the Ukraine war happened. Right, there were people that just instantly coalesced and formed DAOs to fund like charitable causes for refugees running from Ukraine. So Casa DAO was one of them, and there's Ukraine DAO, and so that was actually really amazing because you just basically had software engineers get together, sit down, and say, hey, let's solve this problem. So the problem that we had was we actually had a lot of rich people in Dubai with large hotels or empty space, and how do we connect the right families in Ukraine with those people, right? I mean, we did it in a decentralized manner, and I believe these hackers, they did it in a couple of nights. It was pretty insane. And we just had, a few days before I left, it took about a week, less than 2 weeks to set up Casa DAO. And now this is running right now, and they're actually still trying to match families escaping Ukraine with, housing either here or in Spain. It's actually growing really quickly. So it's amazing how DAOs can sort of just naturally, organically grow when a lot of people have the same sort of, problem they want to solve. And there's no time to set up. Why would you go set up an entity for this, right? This is a really natural way to. Now we can use crypto. So that was really amazing to see happen out here.
Excellent. Well, everybody, that was really insightful. Please join the chat over there. There have been questions coming in, and people are wanting to know. So make sure that you connect there. For everybody who's watching WCEF right now, we're supposed to have an hour-long break, but because we're behind schedule, it's going to be 5 minutes. So go to the bathroom, pause, do whatever you need to do. And we'll see you back here in just a few minutes, and we're going to have a few more presentations. So thank you, everybody. And thank you very much to our panelists. Be sure to
Thanks, guys. It was brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you,
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.